Hello, good evening, and welcome to FPL BlackBox episode 86. It's taken 85 episodes for me to take the reins, to finally take control and do that hello. Az is not with me this week. As you can see, he is laid up. He's convalescing after a recent minor operation. But what a substitute we've got in place tonight in the place of Oscar, aka FPLFocal. Welcome to the show, Focal, your second appearance.
Yeah, thanks for the warm welcome. Yeah, last time I came here, it was with Az, so nice to do one with yourself as well, Mark. Thanks for the invite.
No, it's great to have you here, and thanks for stepping in for Az. I'm sure you're going to be a fantastic replacement for the man himself. For those who don't know, Focal came to the fore in the FPL community last season. Were you in the top 100 at one point? Is that right?
Yeah, I was invited on. I think at the time I was I was top 10 or thereabouts.
Top 10. I do you a discredit.
Well, yeah, I did. I spent a couple of short-lived weeks at number one last season, so I've got the screenshot of that. So I've got that on the living room shelf in a frame.
Wow.
Yeah.
I dream of such accolades to be at that point. I mean, it must have been a crazy time for you. And then after that, obviously, you were doing some videos, weren't you, just before that? And then presumably from that point on, the channel just exploded. I mean, your rise in the FPL community has been meteoric. I say that because I like saying meteoric, and it's not often I get to say it.
It's a good word. Yeah, it has been. Yeah, it's been crazy. I've played for 12 years now. And yeah, back a couple of years ago when we were in quarantine, I thought I'd try my hand at some FPL content, because I've played the game for a long time. Yeah, it's only my second season making content. And to my surprise, it's... the channel's picked up, and people like the stuff I make, which is really cool. So since the start of this year, making FPL content has been my full-time job, which is a dream come true.
Full-time fantasy. Actually, in chat earlier, Az says that Oscar's his full-time fantasy in more ways than one. But the channel's done well. I mean, how many subs have you got now? You're dwarfing us, I think. You're over 100k, right?
Yeah, I'm glid you asked. I got this with me.
Go on. Oh, amazing. Oh, Az, if you're at home watching this, we've got a long way to go before you... When did you get that? Was that really recently?
Yeah, I had it a couple of months ago. It only just recently arrived. They send you an email saying, would you like to request... I think they call it the play button when you hit 100k. Yeah. So I said, of course I did, because it's completely free. So that recently arrived as well. So that's on the mantelpiece next to the screenshot of number one.
Well, may I be the first to congratulate you on that. That's fantastic. So
Thank you, Mark.
Welcome to the show, Oscar. I'm looking forward to what you're going to bring. We've got quite a lot to talk about, obviously, because it's been a couple of weeks. We're going to look back at our game week 13. We're going to look at, obviously, loads of data as we normally do. But we've got things to deal with, though. We've got a new manager at Aston Villa to discuss. We've got the rise of Miggy Stardust, a.k.a. Almiron at Newcastle. And we've got a little flag hanging over a certain player going into Gameweek 14 to discuss. I'd like to get your view on that. But before all that, let's just do a word from our sponsor, because Az will kill me if I don't do this. So yes, thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring this episode of FPL BlackBox. NordVPN, if you don't know, a VPN service that hides your IP address and location, increasing your privacy online. You can connect to different countries online and get their programs. I use it famously to watch Columbo from the US. I love a bit of Columbo, and NordVPN has enabled me to do that. Obviously, the key factor is it protects yourself on Wi-Fi, and it secures all your devices from any nasty hackers. NordVPN is the fastest VPN on the planet. It's the best reviewed VPN out there. It's got a threat protection feature, 24/7 support, and it's got a 30-day money-back guarantee, and that's absolutely key. So grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/scout to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan, free threat protection, and 4 months completely free. And if you don't like it, there's that 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can forget it ever happened. But I'm sure, as I've found, you'll find it incredibly valuable, not least for Columbo. Right, job done on that, Oscar. Let's look at some game week, shall we? We're going to have to start at the top, which unfortunately isn't you, and it isn't me. It's Mr. Az. So let's look at Az's game week. He did far too well, I'm afraid. Yeah, 74 points is what he's got on there.
74? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit ridiculous, isn't it? 74 points. So he had Ward in. It's the Ward and Castagna double up that's been doing it for him.
It's like Castagna, isn't it? Yeah, well, and Ward, yeah.
He's been absolutely very well. He's been absolutely killing it with that. So yeah, it's Ward 8 points, Trippier 2, Castagna 12, White 6, Salah on 2 points, Foden 1, Saha 1, Martinelli 1. Haaland is captain on 26, Kane on 8, then Mitrovic with the 6 point, but 74 in a week where a lot of us struggled. That's incredible, isn't it?
Which is amazing, by the way, because my team's very similar. I think I probably have 3 players different. Castagna, Ward, Kane and White. So 4 players different, and he's comfortably outscored me there. I think a few people are saying the camera's froze, by the way.
Yeah, it's back now. Sorry, that was me. I minimised Zoom by accident, but go ahead.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's amazing because I scored so much less than him, and we're talking about 4 players different from the same starting 11. But yeah, well played, Az. I think he leapfrogged Andy, did he not?
Well, I don't want to make a thing of that, but yeah, I mean, as he's listening, so he'll want me to. Yeah, he overtook Slippers, which has been one of his goals of the season, so congrats on that. But yeah, I mean, like Ward and Castagna, as we look at the data later on, they're going to stand out. I mean, they started the season so miserably, Leicester, but just absolutely turned it round of late. And Ward's turned from villain to hero, isn't he, for those who held on to him, kept their nerve.
Yeah, and this is the funny thing. When I was back on my wild card, I had to leave myself with enough money to move for Salah, so I went for Iverson. So I didn't have that rotation, so it was just Pope, and such a silly decision as it's played out because Salah's been so disappointing, and that 0.1 mil would have been a lot more points with Ward. It just shows it's fine margin sometimes, but good to see us turning it around.
I think is, look, he's got Henderson on his bench as well. And I think the last 2 weeks Henderson has outscored Ward, and I've been going, why aren't you playing Henderson? As a Forest fan, I've been nagging it, but Ward's done brilliantly for him anyway. I think there's only like a 5 point difference, even though like he would have been better off playing Henderson. But the trouble is with Henderson, his hauls have been really difficult to call. And if you're just playing Ward every week, he's done the job for you. So, yeah, incredible run. And he had Andreas there on the bench. Many people had a lot of bench points this week, didn't they? And Az has got 21 there.
Myself included, yeah. Well, yeah, and Az as well, even more. It was one of those weeks, wasn't it? Nico deserves a mention because he's stepped up as well recently. But, yeah, it's been... it was one of those game weeks, I think, a troll game week. Andreas, most people didn't have a player they could bench for him. And he goes on to outscore players like Foden, Zaha, Saka, all these players that you'd never think of bench him. It's
a question, isn't it? Should we be playing him? Because he's got Everton this week. And, obviously Haaland's flagged, but we think he's going to make it more on that later. But Andreas is a player at the moment Andreas Pereira, who's performing at a level which belies his price tag, right? So... yeah. Is it? I mean, we often say on this show about, if a player was more expensive, we'd be playing him. And it's only because he's 4-6 that we don't consider him part of our 11. Is that in our heads, do you reckon?
Oh, definitely. I think it's in my head for sure. If you've got him there for 5.5 or more, you certainly, it plays on your mind. You think, I can't spend that money and bench the player. But yeah, he's I think he's on par with Salah, if I'm not mistaken, which is ridiculous over the season. Yeah. Yeah, they're both on 50 points. Sorry, Zaha and Andreas, both on 50. But, I've been thinking about that because when we come out of the World Cup on the other side, perhaps he's a player that you permanently start and you can use that money, many different ways.
Well, this is it.
You make a good point.
This is it. It's because it's like if we are going to start considering him for the first 11, we can start thinking about going back to 2, even 3 heavy hitters, right? Because that's what it means. It's going to free up. And another player we're going to look at tonight, Almiron and also Bailey. These are players that suddenly are back in our reckoning in a big way. Like we started the season considering starting Andreas, and we started the season looking at Bailey definitely. And there's been a big lull and a big loss of confidence in them. But now there's no doubt that suddenly those budget midfielders are on our radar again, as we'll see when we look at the data later. Are you thinking about it? Are you thinking about starting a cheap midfielder? Any of those 3?
Yeah, it's awkward because he's one of those players you don't really plan to call on him. He's kind of there just in case someone doesn't play. So I've got this headache each week now, and we'll see my GW14 team later, I suppose. And it's the same headache. There's no one that I could bench unless it's Haaland, of course. But there's no one I can see myself bench him unless Haaland is out. So it's going to be the same again. Good fixture home to Everton, but he's going to be first on bench again. So I just have to cross my fingers he doesn't do the same damage again. Yeah,
well, we'll have to see. But it's a good fixture. There's no doubt about that. I had Andreas on the bench as well. I ran out with 56 points. Not bad. Another green arrow, a smaller green arrow. But it's funny. Last time I did the show, Oscar, I was 5.5 million. And so in the 2 game weeks since, I've gone up to 3.9, which is a big gain, but
That's huge.
I've done that mainly through Raya and Tony, who did very well for me in 2 of those 3 weeks. They didn't do well for me this week, but Creswell came in at the end and Bowen got through it. So I got 11 points on Monday night, which kind of turned the red arrow into a green. I end up with Raya on 2, Diaz on 2, Creswell 8, Trippier 2, Zaha 1, Bowen 3, Salah 2, Martinelli 2. God, our midfields are awful. Mitrovic 6, Tony 2, and then Haaland captain standard with 26. And the bench was Everson 0, Andreas 10, Trent with 1, and then Nico there with 6. I had 17 on the bench.
Obviously, you got it right with Trent at least.
Yeah, Trent was a big disappointment.
Yeah. I was thinking this is written in the stars for him to come off the bench and get something now. But yeah, luckily for those that had the early news, that wasn't the case. But yeah, it could have easily been one of those weeks where, we're all on Twitter minutes before the deadline, we get these early news. And sometimes that can actually play against you. If you had come off the bench and scored or assisted, and, the more or less engaged managers, end up benefiting from that, who absolutely, have no idea about the benching in the first place.
What do you think about that? Because there was a bit of chat on Twitter afterwards about, obviously there's people who play this game globally and there's time difference, right? So in the UK, we've got that advantage of always being on the cusp of getting that late team news. And it was widely available. I don't think you had to be in the know necessarily. You just had to be on Twitter Saturday morning to pick up the not leaked team news, but the news that Trent was on the bench.
Yeah.
How much of an advantage is that? And is there anything that FPL can do about it? Because I saw some people go, they've got to fix this. And they already extended the deadline by half an hour, of course. That hasn't worked because it's still a factor. What's your take on this? And how much of an advantage do you reckon it is?
It's a small advantage. It is one. There's no two ways about it. Imagine if... it was the right decision to bench Trent in that case. Many people started him. I saw on my timeline, there was a lot of people with 5 a.m. alarms up early just in case of early news. So I do improvise. It's difficult, isn't it? And this is why they moved the deadline back half an hour a couple of seasons ago, because people used to get the full 11s. So they've fixed that. So I think the edge is less than it used to be, but there is still a little bit of an edge there. But there's no solution. They couldn't move the deadlines back any further. If you make it 24 hours, there's so much you can miss.
No, and the thing is, I felt like I woke on Saturday morning thinking I need to know, but you do feel kind of, sometimes you feel a bit like uneasy about getting that information, and then I put Trent on the bench, which was the right call because he got 1 point.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would have started him. Obviously, okay, it's only a 1 point difference, but it could have been worse. And it could have gone against me. He had that second half header which Henderson saved, and he could have scored that, right? But he didn't, and I gained from it, only a small gain. But it does make you feel sometimes like, you feel uneasy. You've got that
dirty,
advantage. Yeah.
How would you feel about if they move the deadlines to on the first kickoff, like in Champions League fantasy? Do you think that'd be an improvement, or would that be even worse?
I prefer it in terms of feeling better about not having an advantage, I think. But I guess the problem there would be the game wouldn't update then until well into that match, right? And it's kind of nice, isn't it, to have that period of time before the first kickoff to have a look round and see what your rivals have done and, who the person top of your mini league has brought in and stuff like that. So I like having that period is becoming less and less every season, though, because the game's taking longer to update, isn't it?
Exactly.
Now there's 10 million in there.
But maybe that's an infrastructure debate. Maybe they could do something to update in the background. I don't know how it works, but I believe there's other games that update quicker. Obviously, the Champions League doesn't have as many managers playing, but then that does set the precedent that people are going to have to be setting alarms to catch those lineups if they were to move it to the kickoff. So there's no perfect solution.
No, there isn't. I just feel for those who missed out on that anyway. But 56 and me, you're bottom of the pile, I'm afraid, Oscar. That's not why you're on, right? I didn't
cherry picked me.
I didn't say to us, right, find somebody, just make sure they did worse than us, right? Because rank-wise, look, you're absolutely murdering me. But 47.
It's good to see you both doing well, by the way, because I think we're all rooting for you.
Oh, thanks.
Followers of this channel. It's good to see you turning it around.
Well, we haven't turned it around yet. But you have come tonight with some data which actually is very reassuring, which we're going to get to in a moment. But tell us about your game, because basically it's just Haaland and the rest here, isn't it? This team.
It was, yeah. I mean, you can't fault the team. It's Pope in goal, back threes, Dyer, Trippier, Cancelo. I had Salah, Zaha, Martinelli and Foden, so they got me 6 points. I had Haaland captain, so I got that one right. Tony and Mitrovic. I mean, you look at the 11, you really can't I suppose you can make a debate that doubling up on Newcastle against Spurs was a bit iffy, but it's really not bad 11. So 47 was not good. I was inside the top 100k briefly not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, but here I am just outside top 200k now. But can't complain really. It was just one of those game weeks, like you said. Andreas 10 points, Nico 6, so 16 points there. And that decision I was talking about a bit earlier, where I went for Everson over Ward to make sure I had the money for De Bruyne to Salah. Ended up a mistake because I missed out on those Ward points.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't have played Andrew. Looking at that team, there's no way. I mean, this is what's really, when you've got points on your bench, it's a killer when you look at your bench and go, you know what, that was a 50-50 or even a 60-40. But looking at that, none of us would have played Andreas with the teams that we'd have had, and that must be the case for many managers out there. There'll be 100%. Some who luck them onto the pitch in their 11, but even that was difficult to do because most turned up this week. They turned up in terms of being on the pitch, but our midfields really didn't turn up in terms of output. It's just ones and twos everywhere. 1-2, 1-2.
1-2. Yeah. It was a binary week for me, that's for sure, except Haaland, of course. But, everyone captains Haaland, so, it's worthless in a way.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Next game, it could be interesting if he's out.
It could be, and we'll get to that, and I want to know how much you're wavering on that later. Let's look at the great and the good, because talking about people captaining Haaland, I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, we did have the Great and the Good League, if you don't know it, is a league that Az and I have been in since the start of BlackBox. It's run by Greyhead, who writes this article on Fantasy Football Scout, and it includes a lot of kind of names from the community, such as obviously Ben Krellin, who everyone knows, massive following, but also Fabio Borges and Finn Solly, who are probably the top two FPL managers historically, career-wise. I mean, they're highly regarded, and they're doing well this season, but it's got Magnus Carlsen in there, Tom Stevenson, FPL General, and so on. And Az and I are sneaking in there, hanging on to our places. And of the teams in this league, only 3 managers didn't captain Haaland. And to be honest, normally it's worse than that. Normally it's Haaland across the board. What's your views on this? Because me and Az have talked about it before, and maybe I was a little bit harsh in saying that it makes the season dull and it makes it more difficult for managers like myself to make up ground. What's your take on it, on the Haaland captaincy situation?
Yeah, I suppose it's exactly that. It makes the game a bit stale in terms of captaincy. There's less rank swings because everyone's doing the same thing. So, yeah, perhaps the rank swings are lessened because it's a 10-man game each week while he's in this form. So, when we had that blank game week, it felt like an opportunity. Obviously, Salah disappointed. If Haaland's out this weekend, that's another opportunity. It depends what kind of manager you are. Some people just like to chip away slowly at their rank. Some people like those huge swings, which, to be fair, is still a thing if you go for Salah. But it's difficult to bet against Haaland right now.
Yeah, it is. And I'm definitely one of those managers who likes to try and make that Hollywood pass, so to speak. I try and... I've spent a lot of this season, you probably know, I've struggled this season because I started the season taking some risks in trying to do something different. I didn't, I went Son over Salah game week 1 and got hurt. I went against Haaland for in the game weeks where he's delivered and went with him in the game weeks where he hasn't.
You picked the right players in the wrong order.
Yeah, exactly. It's the Eric Morecambe analogy as I used a few times. But, I kind of, looking back, I've chosen the wrong time to take risks. What I should have done, I should have started the season like I'm playing now. I've adjusted my team more in line with the template, and I'm going Haaland captain, and I'm looking for marginal gains rather than the big gains. That is the way to play early on in the season. I just felt at the start I looked and saw opportunity, thought there was opportunity. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I backed Saka over Jesus and I backed Son over Salah, and it was quite close in both cases. Eventually, it's just it didn't start off that way. So I lost ground, but I've adjusted now. Do you think the second half of the season, though, we come off the break after the World Cup, we've got the chips, we've got the double game weeks, do you think, even with the Haaland perma-captain, do you think there's going to be more scope to make up some rank swings there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we'll talk a bit later about how the chip usage so far this season, and there are a lot of chips used already, so there's a lot of ground to be made up there. I think in the later part of the season is where there's more ground to be made up in a way for the more engaged managers, if you're planning well around the upcoming doubles and blanks and so on. But yeah, I have to underline planning well, because last season, I don't know if you were the same. I had the whole master plan with the wild cards.
Oh, did you do the same as me?
Yeah, I did. I thought, I'll be perfectly prepared for this doubles and this blank, and it's gonna be wonderful. And it wasn't. It was awful. So yeah, I have to underline. You have to prepare well for them.
So why do you think you fell for that too? Because I think another one of my flaws is I love a master plan. If I can see something that looks perfect for 4 or 5 game weeks, I fall in love with it completely, and then I just can't see anything other than that. Is that how you felt when you went for
100%. One of the biggest lessons I learned last season is maybe this is a psychological thing, but the more time you invest on something, I think the less you feel inclined to go back to the original plan because it feels like a waste of time. So that's how I think I landed up with that master plan, which was a complete joke of a plan as it played out. But it felt good at the time. It felt well prepared, and it wasn't. So yeah, I'm conscious of that this season. That even this season, there's been times where I've spent time, working out what I'm going to do each week, and sometimes I've gone back to the very first thought because sometimes that's the right one, instinct.
Yeah, no, I mean, sometimes, and it is, and that wild card, I actually changed my mind on the morning of the game week starting, and got my head turned by some of the content out there, some of the Twitter comments that was made, and I was like, yeah, actually, this is a great plan, and I was so sold on it, and I'm not blaming anybody else. It was my call, and I was really sold. And then obviously the double game week didn't drop, and it was just a disaster, wasn't it? So you're absolutely right. We have opportunity in the second half of the season, but we've got to be wary that it can go very wrong, can't it? So
yeah, and I mean, and if Haaland carries on that form like we were saying earlier, and we get to a nice looking double game week, then I'm going to use the triple captain on him because last season it was the wild card into that double. Sorry if this is giving you a PTSD, but yeah, it's awful. Yeah. So I don't know if you did the same, but I wildcarded into that double game week instead of the triple captain. And it was so obvious.
And Salah came in, didn't he? Salah came in massively. Yeah,
massively. Yeah.
Oh no, so absolutely hurt. Just going back to the great and good template rating is interesting. So mine is now 75%. As is on 82, the norm across the league, look at it, and this is the template rating for live FPL, by the way. This is basically how much in line these teams are with the template. The majority of the league, apart from Ben Krellin in the 80s, I'm making up ground at 75, as is at 82, but you've got a couple in there, Jeff and Ben at 63%. You're at 83, well and truly template. Does it feel like that? Do you look at your team and do you feel like your template?
Yeah, it does. I think maybe because I use Twitter all the time and you see people talking about the same players. So maybe it's is this the overall template or just in this league?
This is template compared to the top 10k. I think it is
top 10k. So, okay. Yeah, I would say my team is pretty template, but I tend to just make the moves I think are the best ones. Based on the data each week, and if that leads me towards a template, then maybe that's just consensus among managers.
I have trouble with it. Like I said, I started the season trying to go against it, which really hurt me. I try and look for the big differentials, the big scores, and I've got out of it now, and I've done better for doing that, lo and behold. So lesson learned this season. But I mean, I've just got to choose my battles, and second half of the season, I'll definitely look to do that. Which brings us to some of the data you brought along, Oscar, which is on the chip uses so far. And also, what's incredible about this data is the banding, the difference between the rank bands, and just how many points there are between them. It's so condensed. It's so squashed together. Yeah. I was amazed by this. You want to just talk us through what's on the screen there? Yeah.
So a couple of graphics here. One is it's a table showing the ranks of various tiers. So, for example, 10k, 100k, 500k, 1 mil, and then it's got the points next to those ranks to show you how many points you need to get there. And the point I'm trying to make here is how condensed the ranks still are. So, you can easily move up. As we've seen Az doing recently, you've moved up 1.5 mil yourself. For example, 20 points separates 100k and top 25k. 20 points separates 1 mil and 500k. In your case, 45 points separates you from 4 mil to 2 mil. So if you've had a slower start to the season than you would have liked, then you can take encouragement from that. The trick is just not to get impatient and start making completely irrational moves. And the other table is the chips. So again, the second point there is that there's a considerable amount of chips used already. For example, we've got 25% of free hits have been used. For example, in the recent blank game weeks, Man City and Arsenal blanked, and we saw 1 million free hits used that week. We've had 22% of managers who used the triple captain. And as we were saying earlier, there's 14 postponements already. Every team's got a postponement from Game Week 7. So we will have the double biggest double game week of the in FPL history, I suppose, unless they add a separate game week. So there's lots of opportunities to come, which is the point I wanted to make there. It's still early, and there's big rank gains to make.
Yeah, I think the free hit, obviously there were blanks, right, and there was some justification for playing it, but I was surprised to see that 25% of the player base have used it so far. That's a lot bigger than I thought, because we know what's coming, and similarly the triple captain as well.
Yeah.
We know what's coming, and we know that there's going to be opportunities where both those chips can come in. What's your relationship with the chips like? Because mine is stormy. mine is very hit and miss. It's quite it's not a healthy relationship with the chips. They don't always do well by me. I mean, how have you got on in last season and previous season with them?
Yeah, really mixed bag. I used to triple captain on Salah, and I think it was his third double game week, which was the worst of the three. I had the infamous Mane triple captain back in the day.
Yeah,
when
me too. See, it's similar stories, right?
Mark. Yeah. But the one I remember most fondly was last season, the free hit. I think it was game week 18 or 19. And that was the one that pushed me up to number one. And also the bench boost a little bit earlier in the season as well. Experimentally, I don't think I'd do this now because of the pressure of being a content creator, but I used the bench boost in the single game week. I felt like it was a really good opportunity. The bench was very good, and it happened to come off, better than I could ever have hoped. My game week rank was something like 29. It was that ridiculous. So that was the week that also propelled me up into second. So very mixed bag, but that Mane one still hurts.
Oh God, it's a killer, isn't it? I mean, you raised an interesting point there. Sorry we should be moving on. I'm sure there's so much to talk about, but I want to just seize on that opportunity to talk about what you mentioned there. You're a content creator, right? I don't think Az and I feel as much, we don't produce the volume of content that you do. We don't have the audience that you do. But you're one of these content creators to some extent, that recent controversy about copying teams, etc. Do you feel the more your following grows, the more responsibility you have to play in a safe and risk averse way?
Yeah, I think so. I hate to say yes, but I think so. I don't know if I can see myself bench boosting in a triple game week or something like that. You'll be the absolute laughing stock of the FPL community if that comes off, as it certainly could have done. This was only a year or so ago, and at the time I only had a few thousand subscribers. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure to do well. I think, you have a loyal following who will back you regardless, as we can see, every week everyone tunes in. They don't really care how you and Az are doing. It's great if you're doing better and everyone wants you to do better.
It's a good job. Yeah. We're very grateful
for you. Yeah, exactly. So they'll still turn out regardless. And I think that's the case with my content, but there is pressure because, if you're having a terrible season, if I was coming 8 millionth every season, people will start to question my FPL skills and ability. Rightly so.
Yeah, and it's interesting how that affects your mentality and your appetite for making a more risky decision. It's something I'm conscious of. I've tried not to let it change my natural play, and maybe I've overcompensated. I think this season I probably have. I think that's what I did early in the season, and obviously this show's all about looking at the mistakes you made and being aware of them. And I think that was very much one that I did at the start of the season, as I say. So yeah, it's interesting to get your views on that. Right, let's talk about the changes at Villa. A certain Unai Emery has come in to take the reins at Villa Park, taking over from Steven Gerrard. I'm not shocked. I think early on in Steven Gerrard's tenure at Villa, I don't know about you, but I really don't like it when managers kind of dig out the players in any way. And I remember when Gerrard came in earlier on last season, there was one game, I think they lost 4-1 at home, and he instead of putting the spotlight on himself, he criticised the players for not executing his plan. He said he more or less said the plan was perfect, but they weren't good enough to execute it. And from that point on, I was really down on Villa, on Gerrard. I thought, how do the players feel about that? And it has borne out this season. They've almost played with fear, and I think that's reflecting the kind of regime that Gerrard built. It's all speculation. I love a bit of speculation, but there was clearly something wrong, and as seen by the result of the weekend, straight away a 4-0 win. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say from an outside perspective, but it seems like a very easy way to lose the dressing room.
Yeah.
If you're throwing your players under the bus, straight after games in your press conference, it's their fault, not mine. They didn't listen to my tactics and so on. But yeah, I do think that speaks volumes that straight after his sacking, they win 4-0. So yeah, it seems to me that he probably did lose the dressing room and his time was up. Perhaps they could have sacked him sooner, if anything. I don't know what Villa fans think of that, but
did you see
think,
when Ings scored and when Bailey scored, they both went like that? They both did this.
Really?
In their celebration, they both pointed to their heads as if to say,
temple,
yeah. And I was like, what's that about? That's got to be something to do with,
100%.
Are they, were they criticised for not mentally being able to deal with it? I don't know, but both of them celebrating that, and I was like, that's odd. And
maybe
you do
that's a
wonder,
Gerrard mannerism.
Well,
maybe you used to do this,
I don't know. But I mean, Emery's in now.
Yeah.
And apologies for the headline. If you're under 50, you probably don't get the headline there, but it's a reference to a comedian from the 70s. But never mind, I won't go into that. One there for me and Joe. I think me and Joe are about the only two in the community who get that joke. But yeah, Emery, what do you make of him? Because I think it's harsh to say he's a bit of a figure of fun, but I think the previous tenure at Arsenal, it's a mixed bag, wasn't it, really? And views
definitely,
on him are definitely mixed. What's your thoughts on him taking over at Villa?
Yeah, I think it's a great acquisition. I think he's a very good manager. His time at Arsenal wasn't well remembered. As an Arsenal fan myself, I don't have fond memories of his time. It was really, really bad towards the end. I remember when he came, I think he lost the opening 2, and I thought, here we go. And then he went on a run of 11 or so games without losing after that, and I thought, oh man, well, maybe he's the real deal. Maybe he's what we're looking for. But he never really got going. But we know he's a great manager. You've got the graphics as he's won 4 Europa Leagues. I think he won 3 in a row with Sevilla. So he's a quality manager. Yeah. Maybe even take Villa on a few cup runs in the FA Cup, League Cup. Yeah, top quality manager. Villarreal will be absolutely gutted. I think he's left them at 7th in the table as well, and he's finished 7th for the last couple of seasons in La Liga. So, yeah, good acquisition, I would say. Yeah,
and I think Villa are one of those teams where they've got the potential to push into the top 10, top 8, top 6 and work their way up like that. And Emery will be going there with that in mind. Interestingly, his Arsenal record isn't that bad. He's got a win rate of 55%. And I had a quick look at what Arteta's is at the moment, and it's 59, right? So there's not a huge difference in where Arteta is now and where Emery got to before he left Arsenal. And we know his credentials in Europe and outside of the Premier League have been strong. So I'm expecting big things. Interesting tactically, Az put this together and he looked at the Emery's favoured formation and line-up at Arsenal and then looked at how that could be applied to Villa. And it kind of fits the profile of what they've got. He plays with 2 wide players. He plays with a number 10. He's got an out-and-out goal scorer. He had one in Lacazette, and he played Aubameyang wide left and Mkhitaryan on the right, Ozil behind. That 4, very strong, creative attacking quartet. And at Villa, while he hasn't got that level of talent, he's got Bailey left, Watkins right, Buendia in the 10, Ings as his centre forward. Those are players that, to some degree, are fairly well proven and could produce for him. There's potential, isn't there? I mean, looking at that Villa team.
Yeah, he's. It looks like he's got a lot of what he needs already. I think they probably do need to make a few signings in January, probably wingers in particular. I think that's where Villa are probably lacking most. But yeah, interesting. I thought he'd tend to play 4-4-2. Maybe he's adapted to what he used to do back at Arsenal. But yeah, it's a throwbacks in this graphic. This is only a few seasons ago, but some of the names here, like Mkhitaryan and Torreira, it's just Lacazette up top. It's a reminder how far Arsenal have come as well, on a tangent there. But yeah, it's the fixtures aren't great for Villa. That's the problem, right? They come out of the World Cup home to Liverpool, away to Spurs. So, where do you go there? Maybe it's a wait and see. Gameweek 19, 20. They've got 2 home games. Maybe that's when we move for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a wait and see, but I think you're absolutely right. They're going to make acquisitions over. That's why he's come in now, right? He's come in now to give him the window. He'll come in with some definite targets in mind. And Villa,
it's well timed.
Yeah, Villa needs strengthening, but perhaps only in small areas. They've got a fairly decent squad and some depth there. But yeah, Emery will come in with his own ideas of who they need to bring in. But what's interesting, and we'll look at team data now, I was absolutely shocked just how well Villa have done of late. So we're looking at attacking data for the last 6 matches. And I was just surprised to see Villa up there in 5th. So this is ranked by XG non-penalty per 90. And they're 5th overall with 1.48 XG non-penalty per 90. Just behind Arsenal at 1.51, Newcastle 1.63, Liverpool 1.71, and then City, no surprise, at the top, 1.79. Now, that's based on the last 6 matches, and Villa in those last 6 have had Arsenal at home, Bournemouth away, Newcastle away, Brighton at home, Chelsea at home. Actually, those fixtures must be wrong, because I've got Villa at the end there. I'll have a look. I'll have a look while that's on air, who they have played. But, are you surprised to see Villa right up there in that respect?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, looking at there is a few surprises there. I mean, the top 4 makes sense, but I'm surprised that Villa would be 5th over the last 6 game weeks. Also surprising to see Brentford second bottom. Not encouraging as a Tony owner myself, but yeah, perhaps they did underperform under Gerrard based on that. Unless that last match, the 4-0, did skew things a little bit.
So the Villa last 6 were. It was Southampton at home, Leeds away, Forest away, Chelsea at home, Fulham away, and Brentford at home. They are good fixtures. So that Chelsea home game in game week 11 is the toughest. They lost that 2-0. But clearly, we know that fixtures skew the data. But even so, I was surprised to see that level of, big chances per 90, 3 big chances per 90. They just weren't scoring goals, though, were they? They just weren't, under Gerrard, they just weren't converting those chances. So Emery's got something to work with, clearly there. And in Bailey, he was a player that promised so much at the start of the season, looked so good in that game at the weekend, didn't he?
Yeah, and if he's playing that 4-2-3-1, if that is what he sticks with, then, Bailey's another one you could chuck in that budget mid-bracket. As a potential one to consider on the other side of the World Cup. But yeah, I think Almiron right now is where I would go if I was looking for someone in that bracket. Probably then Andreas and then Bailey. Yeah,
Newcastle 3rd in this table. And they've consistently built on last season and been in the top 10 for attacking and defensive data this season so far. And they're 3rd overall over the last 6 matches. They've had good fixtures, but even so, there's no doubt that, Howe is really building something quite especially there, without really having the level of spending that we'd expect at this point. They're going to go again in January. There's no doubt they'll make more signings. That's going to happen. But he's got such a strong foundation to build on now, hasn't he?
Yeah, 100%. And Almiron, his improvements are kind of lined up perfectly with that as well. Yeah, they're really, really on the upward trajectory. I wonder if they can make top 6, how high they can finish. What do you think? Well,
I think the result of the weekend, Spurs, it's a big step in it. Winning there, it shows that they can now trouble those teams, those top 6 teams. And while they've been performing well and getting the odd result that surprised a few, now they're looking like they can consistently produce results that could push them up into the top 6 and maybe even challenge for top 4. I think that's maybe a season away and a few more signings away, but they're definitely going to trouble things. I think they're going to have a role to play in how the top 4 pans out. If they're not going to feature in it themselves, they're going to be a factor in affecting that top 4.
I do sympathise with Wood as well and Burnley, because obviously he was poached from them just to send them down. What price can we put on sending them down so we stay up? I think it was about 30 odd mil.
He's got to get a loan, hasn't he? He's got
Isaac Wilson. Yeah, he surely goes on loan.
Yeah, absolutely.
They would have him, but yeah, I do feel for him. But yeah, it's a statement of intent. They drew 3-0 with City. They lost, I think, 2-1 to Liverpool. I think it was the last minute, wasn't it? They drew 0-0 with Man United. So definitely a team on the upward trajectory, and House doing a very good job. Which is great as well, because we got Trippier for 5 mil at the start of the season. He's almost 6 now.
Yeah. Brentford, you're right, 19th in this table, which is a surprise and a worry as a Tony owner. We saw this last season, though. They started strongly, then they kind of went for a period where they struggled, and then Ericsson came in and turned that around. I'm not being too alarmist in this at the moment, though. I think they can turn it around. I must apologise. The fixture data is all incorrect by the looks of it. So they've had over their last 6: Arsenal at home, Bournemouth away, Newcastle away, Brighton at home, Chelsea at home, and Villa away. Good fixtures apart from the Arsenal home game. Chelsea home. I guess it's the home fixtures that have been tricky there. Brighton, Arsenal, Chelsea. And they've been so poor away from home, haven't they? So they need good home games for Tony to deliver at the moment.
And arguably, this is a good home game in 14, home to Wolves, right?
Yeah.
I think the only points they've picked up since Large got sacked was against Forest.
Yeah, you have to mention that.
Yeah,
we should have
sorry,
got a point there as well. It was awful.
Yeah, he should have.
But yeah, I mean, I think as a Tony owner, you're going to hold him going into that game without any doubt. And also, as we'll look at later, with Solanke, the injury to Solanke, Tony's going to be a target this week because of that fixture. Let's look at defensive data, and this is where the surprise as well. Villa at the top of this. I mean, that's just crazy. I mean, watching Villa, under Gerrard, they weren't taking chances, but 0.70 xG conceded non-penalty per 90 over the last 6 matches, which betters Newcastle on 0.71. Then City, who are traditionally the top performing defence for this metric, 0.72, and West Ham 0.73. 3 improving teams there in Villa, Newcastle and West Ham in terms of metrics. Newcastle and West Ham to an extent have seen improving results, but Villa didn't, which is why Gerrard's gone. But again, it indicates that Emery's got something to work on there in terms of just the data anyway.
100%, yeah, he's got a good foundation to build upon already. It's not like a start from scratch project. But yeah, it's surprising to see them first. Again, a few surprises. It's surprising to see Liverpool's second bottom.
Yeah.
What a fall off they've had recently. Spurs in 12th, Man United 11th. Forest doing better than Man United and Spurs defensively over the last 6. I think Emery's going to do a good job, and maybe not at Arsenal, but I know at Villarreal he had a reputation of setting a team up well defensively. Didn't concede that many goals. So definitely got one eye on them. Maybe the other side of the World Cup, but not just yet.
It's interesting to see Bournemouth and Forest doing well in this table. I mean, they've definitely got to Bournemouth started the season like this, didn't they? In that they were very pragmatic, not taking chances. Forest certainly didn't. But I think Cooper, I've always said Cooper's a great coach, and he's shown that he's been able to turn us into a team that conceded lots of goals to one that suddenly shored that up. But
why do you think that is? Is that because the players are finally adjusting to the league and tactics, or is it the new contract?
I just think that he knew what to do to play like that. He just didn't want to play like that. I think he came up wanting to be more expansive and hopefully play the brand of football that we played in the Championship. But he's obviously found out that he can't. But he's adjusted, and we've made progress as a result of that. Bournemouth, like I said, started the season like that. But if anything, under O'Neill, they've become a more exciting option in terms of FPL because they are offering goals in Billing and Solanke. The promoted teams have done well. Defensively, Fulham are struggling low. I mean, you can see from this data here, 1.86 XG conceded non-penalty per 90. They are bottom, and they are, of the 3 teams at the moment, they're targetable, aren't they? You'd still back a team against Bournemouth or Forest for goals.
Yeah, you would.
But you would also back them against Fulham for sure.
Which perhaps says it's not sustainable for Fulham, but them in particular, they're having a remarkable season so far. Mitrovic had a big part to play in that, but they're 7th between Man United and Liverpool, which is really impressive. Straight after coming up. I saw Neto came off for Bournemouth last weekend at half time. So if he's out, I think it'd be a big miss. From what I gather from Bournemouth fans, he's had a big impact.
Well, he has, hasn't he? They started the season looking very shaky, particularly at set pieces. And then Neto, took the place in goal after the 9-0, not surprisingly. Since then they were a team transformed. Obviously, it coincided with O'Neill coming in as well. But that could be a big loss because he looks a downgrade, doesn't he, Travers, compared to Neto? So.
And I do fear actually going into, if he is out, I do fear having no Son or Kane because I think it's going to be one of those weeks, especially if Haaland is out. We'll have to see what comes over the next few days. But if he's out, then I'd be very tempted if I had Kane or Son to go there. So I do fear that fixture as someone with no Spurs assets besides Dyer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And talking to keepers, let's move on to look at the keepers again. Apologies again for the fixtures and me not getting that right. That was a last minute thing and I clearly didn't sort the salt, so to speak.
You're going to throw Az under the bus for that one.
Yeah, no, it was all me. Let's look at keepers over the last 6 because this is the rise of Danny Ward and it is extraordinary. It's sorted by points per 90, and out on top is Alisson, who's just had an incredible run with an assist and short scoring a goal. Imagine that. But he's just been incredible, isn't he, Alisson, for Liverpool? And a good job because they've needed him because defensively they have, as we saw on that table, conceded shots and conceded big chances. But Alisson stood up to the challenge and he's been the outstanding keeper recently, along with Kepa at 4.5. And then you've got Danny Ward, 5.33 points per 90. What's interesting, if you look at those top keepers, you look at the top 7 here, and they've all got good saves per 90. The one keeper who hasn't produced the saves per 90 is Danny Ward. You'd think he would be turning in those points, but he's made up for it with clean sheets, hasn't he?
Interestingly, he's negative on expected goals prevented. But it shows how good Kepa's been. I did wonder, when Potter came in, if he was more of a Potter keeper, better with his feet. But he's taken the opportunity straight away. But credit to anyone who has Ward. He's done very well. Those who caught Ward's points. Is he on like 4 clean sheets and 5 or something like that? It's a really impressive turnaround. I know perhaps it's because they signed the centre-back. Is it Fass?
Yeah, he's been outstanding since he's come in, hasn't he? I mean, it's... he has made the difference, and the transformation has been pretty. I mean, I can't. I mean, tactically, it's been very subtle what they've done, but it's just his arrival has made the difference and shored them right up. I mean, I'm thankful that they're playing City this week, because surely that's not going to be a clean sheet for Ward this time. But
I hope not.
It's been crazy. But Kepa, going back to him, presumably Kepa's going to be the keeper we all go to when we get to game week 17, because obviously we get to 16, we get the unlimited transfers, and Kepa at 4.5, he kind of looks too good to be true, doesn't he?
Yeah. I mean, I had the same thinking with Fofana. I grabbed him because he was 4.4, unlucky with the injury. But when you've got a player who's that cheap and you're buying into a top defence, it's just worth the money. It's great value. Good to see Henderson up there as well. Who do you think England's number 1 should be out of interest for the World Cup? Between him, Ramsdale and Pickford. Yeah,
it's interesting because Pickford's got the best fixtures until game week 16. I was looking at keepers and thinking, who would I buy at this moment in time if I was getting a keeper till 16? And Pickford's got great fixtures.
Pickford.
Yeah, he's got an outstanding run. But you look at his table, and over recent fixtures, he's disappointed. He's produced a saves 3.40 per 90, but points per 90 is 2.80. In terms of the England keeper, I mean, it's Pickford's to lose. I think it will be Pickford, Pope and Ramsdale. I think Henderson will miss out, which is a shame for him, because I think he is. I think he probably is in that top 3. It's funny, Ramsdale. I go from thinking Ramsdale's our best keeper to like thinking he's calamitous and got a mistake in him. Where do you? You're an Arsenal fan. How do you feel about him?
He does have a mistake in him. He's still a young goalkeeper. Pickford's got more experience, and he's never let England down, to be fair. I think if I had to pick 3, it would probably be Pickford, Pope, probably second, and then one of Ramsdale or Hendo. Probably Ramsdale, but I think it'd have to be Pickford at the World Cup. He's not done us wrong.
I don't know what Henderson has to do to get in. He obviously only got a couple of games left now, and he's already saved 2 penalties. I don't know what more he can do. So I just don't see him making it. Pope has done enough, hasn't he, to get in? And I think Ramsdale was always second choice to Pickford. And I think, if anything, Pope's jumped the queue now, and he's the bigger threat to Pickford, I think. So, I feel sorry for Henderson, because he's been absolutely fantastic for us, but I don't think his World Cup dream's going to happen. But, we'll see. We'll see. Defenders last 6 then. Defenders have been disappointing this season, there's no doubt. We had that big at the back phase. I think that's been and gone now. I think it will come. It will come back though, won't it?
Yeah, definitely will. Yeah, it's funny how the template shifted. We did start the season with the big at the back. Those who start with 5 at the back at the very beginning were doing quite well. Trent, Cancelo, Diaz, Trippier, those kind of guys, James. And then it's kind of shifted to the midfield. It shifted to the forwards, and then we're kind of back in the midfielders. But they've been disappointing overall. Yeah.
Last 6 matches, it's still Trent Alexander-Arnold out on top for XGI non-penalty per 90, 0.40. And Trippier, Perisic, Robertson. These are names that we'd expect to see up there, but we just expect more returns certainly from Alexander-Arnold and probably from Perisic as well. I think it's fair to say it's not just Trent who's been disappointing this season. I expect, I've had Perisic, and I got rid the week before last for Diaz, because I kind of had enough of just holding on to him, waiting for that game week. It will come, won't it? He will have those 1 or 2 game weeks. But
he's going to have a monster game week at some point. But it's the rotation with Sessegnon, and it's the same problem with Doherty. If Emerson was injured, it'd be very tempting then, but maybe Spence would get a look in. But there's too much rotation there to go there.
Where do you stand on your defence going forward? When you get into game week 17, are you going to just have one premium back there and go with fives and some 4-5s, because you've got the Arsenal defence, we've got the likes of Creswell, we've got even some defenders who are lower down the pecking order in terms of FPL, but if you're not getting attacking returns, you get Castagna's here 7th in this list. He's been the big benefactor of Leicester's recent form. 0.21 XG non-penalty per 90, which doesn't sound great, but it's better than Cancelo at 0.15 to put it into perspective. So there's some good cheap defenders who aren't delivering massively in terms of attacking returns, but nobody is. So where will you likely go with that?
So I haven't thought too much about it, but I think what I'll probably do is I'll keep hold of Trippier. I think I'll keep hold of Cancelo just because he's that reliable route into City's defence. But yeah, as far as the third defender and fourth and fifth, I wouldn't be at all surprised if I end up rotating 3 4.5s, Castagna, what are the cheap guys here? Maybe you could even double up with someone like Botman, he makes it here. I can see myself doing that. Maybe Arsenal, there's some value there in White, Saliba, those guys. Yeah. That's probably how I'll go. I'd like to see more from Trent before I go back. But yeah, it's funny, isn't it, how things have played out? Because remember how much everyone was kicking off when they did the price reveals. What were they thinking? Trent for 7.5, Robertson for 7. They've ruined it. Everyone's going to be
me included.
And they overpriced them. Yeah, myself including as well.
I can't believe that Trent's gone down in pot. I mean, I didn't think. I mean, I've got him back now, but I do look at it and think, I should be on Cancelo, and it probably will be Cancelo I go to from 17 onwards, because Trent just hasn't done enough. And it's not just Liverpool's lack of clean sheets. It's the fact, you look at his attacking returns over the last 6 years. He's only started 3, but no goals, no assists. The data still suggests that he's got it in him, and he probably will end up being top scoring defender. But he is testing our patience. And
he is. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one thing, I look at Creswell here. He looks encouraging, and I've watched him in recent matches, and he's been very close to getting bonus because of the chance creation. An open play crosses per 90. I think he's second only to Trippier here, 4.34. Chance created per 90, 2.67, which is stronger than Trent Alexander-Arnold over his 3 matches. So Creswell's another one who I think he's beginning to emerge, and even in a back four at West Ham when he plays left back, I think that and the other day, was I mistaken? Was he going to take the penalty the other day? It looked like he grabbed the ball and then Benrahma took it off him.
I saw that as well. Yeah, he did. He had it in his hand, and Benrahma said, "Can I take it?" And Rice was on the pitch as well. Bowen did say, I think it was a game week before after he missed. He said, "There's no chance. I'm taking the next one." So it looked like it was going to be Cresswell, but then Benrahma, I think, won it. But either way, he did ask Cresswell, and Cresswell gave it to him. Skamaka was off the pitch, so who knows? But I'm definitely looking at Cresswell. 2 home games before the World Cup, not this week, but certainly considering him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, let's move to look at midfielders, because here we're going to touch on a couple of names. We've mentioned them already, and that's Leon Bailey and Miggy Almiron. Again, it's sorted by XGI non-penalty per 90. Foden out on top. De Bruyne is second. So Foden on 0.73 XGI non-penalty per 90. De Bruyne on 0.71. Then it's Bailey 0.69. Then some fella called Salah 0.62. And Almiron is in 7th at 0.50. We'll look how that compares to his previous seasons in a minute. It is ridiculous. First of all, let's talk about Foden and De Bruyne. I had De Bruyne. I've now moved to Foden. What's your stance on these two? Because De Bruyne's the more reliable, it seems, but Foden again he's doing that. He seems to do it every season, where he has that period where he starts to suggest he's going to be elite, and I think we're in the midst of that now.
I agree.
Do you feel that way? Do you feel that?
I do, yeah. I've been looking at it, potentially reversing back out of Foden. Maybe in 15, I could do something like Salah and Foden to De Bruyne and Bowen, something like that, to move back to De Bruyne, but also to catch West Ham's last 2. Yeah, I mean, Foden, he's doing exceptionally well. I think he's already thereabouts his best scoring season ever. So I think he's still a great pick, but it is that rotation risk. Perhaps now he's at the bench and it's an excuse to keep hold. I do think being benched last weekend probably points towards the start now. I'm going to probably wait a week and then decide. But Yeah, it's another decision for the other side of the World Cup. Where do we go with the premiums? Do we go De Bruyne and Haaland, or De Bruyne, Haaland and Kane? 2 or 3 premiums. What's your thoughts on De Bruyne?
I think I like him, and I've moved away from him recently because I do think that Foden can. I found De Bruyne a bit frustrating because there were games where he should deliver and he ends up dropping deep and directing traffic rather than getting involved. And then there are games, I think it's very hard to read his returns. That's the problem with him. Yeah. You're not going to captain him, so then you start to question the amount of money. And Foden, for me, yeah, he's come on again, hasn't he? It's another level now. For him to be top of this table, it illustrates just how he's now emerging as an attacking option for us. He's always been thereabouts. He's always been in the top 10. His data's always been strong, but he's never been the top midfield option. I think maybe it's got something to do with Salah dropping off a bit this season. He's not there. But Foden's, look at those shots per 90 and shot in the box per 90, 3.64, 3.36. That's double that of De Bruyne. It's hard to ignore, I think.
It is. 11.5 points per 90. I suppose the factor at play there is, right, he doesn't play the 90 often.
Yeah.
But, yeah, incredible. Yeah, one of the best value mids, you'd have to say. Perhaps the best value mid right now would be Almiron. But, yeah, it's the fear factor with City in those next 3 fixtures because, Leicester away, Fulham home, Brentford home. You feel like there's a few huge wins in there. And you just want to catch those points, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I moved from De Bruyne to Salah, probably a mistake, what it has been in terms of output. But I've already made my transfer and gone back to Foden because I feel because of those fixtures you mentioned there, the 2 home games, Brentford and Fulham, I had to have another City attacker in those games because I don't have Cancelo, so I don't have the attacking promise that he brings, which hasn't been as strong, but he's delivered 2 goals, which is double his output last season already. So not having Cancelo made me feel like I needed to go in for another City attacker. And Foden just looks too good, doesn't he? It's too much to ignore, I think. Yeah, I mean, let's talk about Bailey. 4.6. Going back in yet, or is it a wait and see how Emery settles?
Yeah, he's a wait and see. I think it's a wait and see right now. Not yet. Like I said, on the other side of the World Cup, the fixtures aren't great, so I'd want to see how they do out the other side of the World Cup as well, because it's too unpredictable right now, and the fixtures, I say, probably aren't worth it. I'd rather Almiron, Villa at home this week, Southampton away, bench him for Chelsea in 16. I'd probably find the extra cash if I can for Almiron. I don't think I'd do Andreas to Bailey or anything like that.
Okay, well, let's look at Almiron. It is crazy his season compared to he's been in the Premier League 5 seasons. That surprised me, first of all, because I thought it was maybe 3, maybe 4 at most, but it is 5 seasons. He arrived in 18-19, and he's been a player that he arrived in the Premier League with a good record, and he looked like he had potential to convert his MLS form into something where he could deliver goals and assists. He would have attacking output. It's taken 5 seasons, and suddenly now the player that we thought could be in there is emerging, and he's a real weapon at the moment. I mean, that goal at Spurs, the way he just burnt, I think it was Ben Davis, it was pretty chilling, wasn't it? When you see that, you've got to take notice, right? Regardless of this data.
Yeah. And that's another thing. We're talking about psychological biases and that sort of thing. At the back of your head, you think, oh, no, he's never going to be a good pick. Look at his last 4 years. He's never been an option. This graphic says in 1920, he started 35 games and scored 4 goals, and he's already at 6 goals by Gameweek 14, right? So, he looks incredible. He's really, really turned things around, and he's starting to look like the player that they wanted to have signed. So, he's definitely an option. I think he's the most transferred in player this game week, actually, and rightly so.
Yeah, I mean, it was only the fact that I needed that extra City attacker that didn't lead to me go for it as well. And also I think that, he frees up money and you want to do something with that money. But I think coming out of this break and into 17, if he maintains that form going into the break, he's going to be in a lot of teams. He really is, because that's going to enable you to certainly get a second heavy hit or even go for a third. And it's going to enable Kane as an option who's been so reliable. I think it's pretty inevitable he's going to figure in our Game Week 17 lineups. I mean, you look at this data, his touches in the box per 90 are 4.95. That is, it's almost, well, it is more than double on his last season, 2.20. Yeah. Shots per 90, 2.79 compared to 1.68 last season. And shots in the box up to 1.89 per 90. he's never been anywhere near that. Ironically, it was his first season, 1.42, that he got nearest. So he's just a player transformed.
Yeah, he's in a purple patch, that's for sure. I mean, the conversion rate as well, 19.4%. Last season it was 3%. So
does that suggest he can't maintain it? Would you?
Yeah, I would say yeah. I don't think he can maintain it. I think we do expect some, to average out to the mean, but nonetheless, he's a very good option for whatever he is, 5'4" at the moment. I don't think he keeps that going because that's, to me, unsustainable. But yeah. I think you're right. The other side of the World Cup, if we don't get him now, we'll have him then.
Yeah, I think what's positive for him as well, he's playing in a Newcastle team that look like they're going to carry on in the same vein, right? So even if Almiron does regress, which we would expect based on that conversion rate, 19.4, he's never been anywhere near that previously. So we expect some regression, but Newcastle, I just don't see Newcastle fading as a force. They're going to sign more players in January. I guess the only concern there is, will they sign anyone to compete with Almiron Start? But at the moment, it's not going to be a concern because he's in that first 11.
To lose.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, there's another graphic I've got for Almiron here, which was looking at his shots and just underlines really how much of a threat he's become. In 2021, he had 7 shots on target over the entire season. Only one of those shots on target was in the box, as this graphic shows. Wow. And if you look at the cluster of shots that he's had so far this season, you can see that there's been more in the box. But he's had 7 shots on target in the box alone this season
already, and not just that, right in front of goal, which is right where you want him to be taking them. How's getting the best out of him? It's
a complete transformation in terms of the level of threat that he provides. So, while there will be regression, this suggests that Howe has just transformed the way he's used in that team, and obviously tactically, Almiron is just getting forward more and getting into more opportunities to threaten the opponent's goal. And if that continues the next 2, he's gonna be a hugely popular target. There's no doubt about that.
I was tweeting the other day, if you'd said to me before the season that, by game week 14 or even 13, I think he'd done it last week, that Almiron would be more points than Salah, I would have assumed Salah gets injured or something. But it's remarkable how they've both gone different directions this season. Yeah.
And we expect that. It's interesting. We expect that to change. Salah will kick on. Salah will get back to near the levels he was before, I think, in terms of output at some point next part of the season. And Almiron will regress. But the value that Almiron offers, it's just hard to ignore at the moment. And like I said, I think that enables you to look at Kane as an option. And because he's been so consistent, Kane and De Bruyne are not as explosive as Haaland. They're not going to be our captains in many game weeks. But if you can get a player like Almiron in, and even look at Bailey as well, who could become a factor under Emery, then suddenly you've got a lot of money to flood throughout the squad. And we said it's not really big at the back at the moment either. So
no, they could be the keys to the threemium.
Yeah, we're going to go back to it, aren't we? Let's look at forwards over the last 6 game weeks. And Tyro time, Abonee is second in his table. It's ranked by XGI non-penalty per 90 again. Nunes out on top. He's been out on top ahead of Haaland a few times this season. He's out on top with 1.10, but only with the 2 starts and 167 minutes. Haaland is supreme. He's third in his table, 0.76. There's no, we're not going to question Haaland's place at the top of this table most weeks, right? He's going to be back on there by the end of the season, no doubt. Abonee, I don't know what to make of that. I mean, the jury's out on him as a Forest fan, but in a time when Solanke's got a knock and got an injury and may not figure, I wonder how many people will look at Unai. I think he's definitely going to start against Arsenal. And then we've got a couple of decent fixtures in Brentford and Palace at home. So he could be an option, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it's we look at the next few game weeks, you've got in game week 16, Tony's got City away. Mitrovic has got City away in 15, Man United at home in 16. So, I think a few of us are going to be looking for, a filler striker for those last couple of game weeks. I don't know if I can see myself making the Awani move, but maybe. He'd have to really impress against Arsenal. But, it's a good question because who do you go to? Maybe Calvert-Lewin, but there's nothing that leaps out right now.
Calvert, it's a bit early, isn't it, with Calvert-Lewin? He's had that one game. He impressed in that game, but I want to see a bit more. I mean, he's another player, I think, for 17 onwards. Skamaka, probably, with the 2 home games that they've got, could be the option.
Yeah. Skamaka's a good shout. Yeah, and his numbers look pretty good here. 3.9 shots per 90, 3 in the box per 90. Yeah, maybe Skamaka for those last two, because I'm thinking about selling Mitro. It just kind of makes sense to me. Have you got him?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a hard sell, isn't he? Because he's so the focal point of that team. I think even when the fixtures are tough, he's a player that you'd back to. He could get you something. So I'm wondering. I've got Mitrovic and Tony, and I think they're difficult players to lose because they're so important and integral to their teams that you look at a fixture and they'd have to have a run of bad fixtures for me to give up on them. But going into 17, I'm not going to have the same front three. I'll either go 2 up front, or I probably will look to Harry Kane as one of my front three if I've got a 3. He's in this table 0.52. He's not like Salah. He's not been stellar. He's not been right at the top where you'd expect him to be. But he's been so consistent. 5 goals in these last 6 game weeks and 1 assist. He's just chipped away. He's not done enough to ever make us think, well, the captaincy needs to go on Kane. But he's so reliable.
Yeah, he hasn't done enough for that. But yeah, you're right. If Haaland wasn't around, we'd be talking about how essential Kane is this season. But yeah, right now it's difficult to move off Haaland for anyone. Those who have been brave enough, been burnt.
What do you think to Ings? Do you think, out of the Emery situation, Ings is a player who before has proven that he can mix it with like the top tier forwards in terms of output. He's got the 2 goals in the 3 starts over the last 6 game weeks. And if he has nailed down that striker spot and Watkins is going to play wide, and if they don't sign anyone, which is a big if, I guess, do you think Ings could be a factor?
He could be. Was he the one leading the line last match? Watkins out wide. Yeah, he could be. Yeah, he's one of those, like, you have to catch him at the right time, and he's been in and out the side under Gerrard. But yeah, 6.6 is a great price. We know what he's capable of. A couple of seasons back, I think he scored 20 goals or something like that. It's scraping the barrel a bit. I'm not really sure where I'm going to go with the Mitrovic replacement. So I think I'll give it a week and then reassess where I go.
Yeah, I think Callum Wilson would be a factor if Almiron wasn't going to be in our heads ahead of 17, because I think he's done enough this season to show. But again, it's the fitness with him, and he's not in the top 10 for any of the key factors other than next year non-penalty. So he's not an obvious pick, and I do think there could be a chance that Newcastle strengthen again, right? And so we'll see. I think Almiron's going to kill Callum Wilson as an option completely, sadly.
Interesting.
If he does him. Right, let's look at our predictions. The prediction stand-ins, we did awfully. Az and I, over this recent run of games, it's just been absolutely dreadful. So in game week 13, I only got 2 outcomes correct. I got 1 score correct, was West Ham Bournemouth. I went 2-0, which came in right at the death to save my face a bit. Az got the 3 outcomes. He got the Man City he got the Brighton score again correct. He keeps getting his own team correct this season.
He's asking his dad for help, I think, there.
Yeah, his dad
seems to know Brighton.
I think so. His dad seems to be a bit of a realist when it comes to Brighton. And yeah. So we haven't been doing well recently. I've gone under the 50% now correct outcomes, 49.5. Az is on 45.7. We've made our predictions for game week 14. Oscar, you've chipped in as well. Let's go through these and work our way through. Yeah, City, Leicester. So Leicester at home to City rather in the 12:30 game. Again, we've got the chance of getting that early team news, and obviously normally for City that wouldn't be too massive, but it could be absolutely huge, couldn't it? If Haaland's a doubt.
There's going to be a lot of 5 a.m. alarms again for that first deadline. Yeah, if we catch wind that Haaland's out, if we don't get anything before the deadline in advance, then it could be massive. Interesting. We've gone similarly. You've gone 2-0. I've gone 3-0. Az has gone the 3-1.
Yeah, City have been shipping careless goals, and Maddison's always got something a worldie in him, I guess. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. We're not going to sell Haaland though, are we? We bench him, wouldn't we? Or would you swap him in for Kane for 1 week? That's the tough thing. How much money have you got tied up on him?
Yeah, I've got a lot. I moved for him. Like yourself, I started gaming on with Kane, and I quickly reversed that to Haaland. Back out of that Sunday night because I could see it being a problem. So I've got a lot of money tied up in him. It did cross my mind briefly, will I go Haaland to Kane if Haaland's out? I think there's big upside there, but I would be very, very afraid of those last 2 home games not owning Haaland. So you'd only
do it obviously if you had 2 transfers, you probably consider it, because then you can carry one over and do this. Get Kane for Spurs at Bournemouth, which is the next fixture. And I've gone 2-0 as and you've gone 3-0. So you've got to assume if that rings true, Kane's going to deliver again.
Yeah.
And it would be tempting, wouldn't it, if we do hear that Haaland's out, to make that one move there and then swap back maybe. But
would you be tempted?
I think I would be. I mean, I think the trouble is that I've got players with difficult fixtures coming up as well. I think you mentioned Mitrovic plays City, doesn't he? And I think Tony Tony got City as well? I think he has.
Gameweek 16. Yeah.
So I've got problems there that I'd ideally want to spend transfers on rather than spend one getting Haaland back in. So it'll be a tough call. The news would have to be definite.
It'd have to be definite, but it's very aggressive as well. Is it worth it? The money you lose to go and have to spend that to get them back in. It's a bit easier to justify if you were late on the Haaland train, but if you've had him since Gameweek 1, you sell him for 11.8. You've lost 0.4 mil buying him back for 12.2 or whatever it'll be. And I don't think it's a move I'll make.
That 0.4 mil doesn't sound a lot, but that's 0.4 mil you don't have when you refresh your team, right? And from 16, between 16 and 17, and could make a difference, right? Third fixture of the game week is Brentford at home to Wolves. Not quite a garden centre, but it's not far off. I've gone 2-0 as. You've gone 2-1. It is a bit dull here. I mean, you can only see this going one way. We talked about Brentford being weak away from home, but at home they should get this, shouldn't they?
I can't see beyond the Brentford win. Yeah, I mean, I've backed Wolves to put one past them just because they need a reaction. It's very, very poor, but I think it's going to be a Brentford win. I think that'll be fairly comfortable, that one.
Brighton Chelsea has gone for the 2-2. He's been getting their scorelines correct, so maybe he's got a point with the draw. You're backing him for a draw as well, 1-1. I've gone a 2-1 Chelsea. Potter going back to his old club, of course, and the script is written. I think I think Chelsea will nick it. I'm worried about Brighton actually. I think they've started well under De Zerbi in the 3-3 at Anfield, but to not beat us, and then they've struggled for goals again. They've gone back. They've kind of just settled into that typical Brighton pattern of looking okay, looking some nice football, but no end product again. I don't know whether they're going to get dragged into a relegation fight. I wouldn't have thought so. I think they've got enough, but they're going to have to buy. I think he's going to have his ideas, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think from what I read, he has a similar philosophy of how he likes to line up tactically, and so I think that's partly why he's not done too badly as he's come in. I'm sure he will tweak things over time, but I think they'll be absolutely fine. I don't see them anywhere near relegation. I've gone 1-1. I think they'll give Chelsea a tough time.
Where do you stand on their attacking assets? Like Trossard's been in and out of teams recently. Delivered at City, trolled us completely, didn't he? What's your thoughts on them?
Yeah, many people sold him for Saka and Foden, and he's the one that scores and wipes out Cancelo's clean sheet in typical FPL style. Yeah, I'm looking at him. Maybe I could do Martinelli to Trossard for the last two games because Arsenal got back-to-back away games. So Trossard's in my thinking. He might make his way back into my team, but not just yet. Probably not this week. Yep,
fair enough. Palace Southampton, another dull-looking game. It's not on TV, so I think small mercies there. Az has gone 1-0 Palace. I've gone 2-1 Oscar 2-0. Yeah, again, it's another one of those games where it looks like a home banker, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does to me, yeah. I think I saw Southampton a second bottom or thereabouts for XG over the season. Not sure about last 6, but I think a Palace win there. Clean sheet wouldn't surprise me. Maybe wishful thinking. I've gone 2-0. I'm hoping for a Zaha return or 2 there.
Yeah, I've given them a goal. They are bottom for attacking data over the last 6, 0.74 XG non-penalty per 90, one big chance per 90 as well. So that would suggest that it's likely to be a clean sheet. I've given them a goal. At Palace. That might be kind, actually. Maybe I should have gone a wipeout, but it's the home win. Newcastle Villa, another home win. Emery's first start. It's a very difficult fixture, this. I think going to Newcastle for any team is really tough. And off the back of Spurs
first game then, or is it?
I presume he's going to be. Is he going to be in place for 14? If not,
I'm not sure actually. I thought I read somewhere it might be 15, maybe because he was waiting on a permit, but I'm not 100%.
We always have that thing though, don't we? When a new manager arrives, even if he's not in the dugout, the manager, the caretakers, or the interim manager always ask, "Oh, did they pick the team? Did they have any influence?" Like that, you must want Emery. You want to read something into the fact that Emery had an influence on it. I mean, Villa go there off the back of the 4-0. They'll be high on confidence, but I just think Newcastle are such a tough nut to crack now.
Yeah. Yeah, I've gone 2-1, same as regrettably as a Trippier owner and Pope owner. But yeah, I think they'll go into that game with confidence as well after the 4-0. But I do think Newcastle were too much at home. So I've gone Newcastle 2-1.
Yeah, 3-1 for me, 2-1 for Oscar and Az. Fulham Everton, Az has gone the 1-1. I've gone 2-1, and you've gone for the draw as well. You keep agreeing with Az on the outcomes.
Interesting that, yeah.
I think a home win here. I think that I just like Fulham at home, and Andreas, as we said, Andres Pereira in great form. Mitrovic is just about held on to his fitness, and he's delivered over the last 3, I believe. So I think they'll just have too much for Everton here. Then the final game of the Saturday is Liverpool at home to Leeds, and it's another home win. 2-0 for Az, 3-0 for me. You've gone 4-0. Salah to deliver then, right?
Oh, I hope so. I can't go through that twice again. Yeah, I mean, I look back to, was it Man United they lost to before Bournemouth or something like that? They had a really poor result, and then they went to get that 9-0. So I think it's going to be one of those games, on home soil where the fans will be looking for a reaction. They'll be behind the players. So I think it's going to be a comfortable one for Leeds. Again, maybe wishful thinking as a Salah owner, but I've gone 4-0.
Leeds are really dropping off as well, aren't they? I mean, it does look like Jesse Marsh is under a lot of pressure, and this is a terrible fixture. I mean, in a way, on paper, it's a terrible fixture, but maybe he feels that Liverpool are vulnerable. But I can't see Leeds getting anything out of it. They're going there with they're at a low, and it's looking bad for Jesse Marsh. He could well be the next casualty, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. Yeah, it could be on borrowed time. Obviously, he's not expected to get much here, but yeah, they look like a team heading down at the moment as it stands. If I had to pick a team getting relegated, I think it would be Leeds. I hate to say Forest, but probably Forest and maybe Bournemouth the third.
Well, I didn't want Leeds to go down last season, but obviously, as a Forest fan, I've got to look after number one and hope that Leeds do get dragged into it to give us more chance. We go to Arsenal, first of the Sunday games, 2:00. Az has gone a 2-0, I've gone a 2-0, and you've gone a 3-0. So even though we beat Liverpool in game week 13, you don't see us building on that. It's difficult, isn't it? I feel sorry for Cooper, really, because he's done so well to shore it up. We get the result against Liverpool, and then I think, other than City away, this is the toughest fixture around at the moment.
I agree. Yeah, I think we're going to have far too much to offer for Forest. I mean, you're doing so well recently, Forest, and I'd love for you guys to stay up. I think Arsenal is probably about as tough as they come right now, especially away. So yeah, I think that'll be definitely a clean sheet, 2 or 3-0.
Sadly, I have to agree with you. United West Ham, I've gone 2-1, and both you and Az, you agree again. You've gone for the 1-1 draw. Bit dull, that, do you think? What do you think of United? Dull, yeah. Where do you think United are at the moment? Because they've never really given us an FPL asset so far.
No.
Do you think there's any hope in the second half of the season that someone there is going to emerge? Bruno's too expensive, right? Rashford, we flirted with a little bit. Is there anybody else there that you think might come into the reckoning?
Yeah, unless Bruno gets back to his form, his first couple of seasons, then I can't see myself going there at all. Rashford's the one, perhaps. 6-6, very good price. Maybe Anthony. He started very well, obviously. But yeah, beyond that, maybe defensive assets like Dallo. But there's no one that leaps out right now, as you say. Yeah.
No, fair enough. Before we talk about captains, we should talk about what's come out of City in the last couple of days in terms of their injury to Haaland, because Haaland, obviously, we're so used to looking at him as the perma captain, but suddenly we might have some thinking to do. So quotes, I've just snatched the tweets from City Extra here. Guardiola says, 3 things. I saw him so tired. The second one, he had a bit of a fever, like João Cancelo. The third, he had a knock in his feet. Odd. That is why he wasn't able to play the second half. He went off on 45 minutes, of course, in last night's European tie. And then he went on to say, I don't know right now. A little bit concerned at half-time, but I saw him walking okay at the end. Lots of quotes leaking out. We expect more team news in the next 24 hours or so. Are you worried at the moment?
A little bit, but it's one of those where you have to keep him, really. There is ground to be made up if you're bold enough, but you're going to have to be in a position to reverse that, I think, as soon as game week 15. But yeah, it's odd. I mean, Pep's got a reputation of being fairly useless in his presses. He says he's tired. I think he's got influenza and he's got a knock on his foot. So there's 3 issues there, potentially. Yeah, hopefully we get early news. But as you say, the Man City game is the first one of Game Week 14. So hopefully we get some early news that we can move accordingly on those that are looking
I've got
to make a
mixed feelings
decision
about
there.
it though, Oscar. I mean, it's like I said earlier, it feels wrong to benefit from that league team news, and when it's something as big as knowing if Haaland's going to play or not, it suddenly changes. It becomes a bigger scale thing, doesn't it? So I hope he does pull through, and I hope we don't get that.
But what would you do if he's benched? Would you start him anyway?
If he was benched, yeah, I probably would.
Maybe it's not a pretty, it may not affect it this week because you may just start him regardless. I'd be tempted.
Yeah, I think the thing that makes me feel hopeful is that we haven't seen Haaland taken off early in games, even games where they've won the game. You know, like against Forest when he got the hat trick and they were far ahead and the game was won. He hasn't substituted Haaland very early. Right, he may have subbed him in games, but often late, and sometimes he's just completed the 90 when the game is won. So that makes me think. Yeah, and it makes me think that there's almost like they're helping him like towards this golden boot, towards the records. They're aware that he can smash the records, and was he 5 short of last season's golden boot total? It's crazy already.
Yeah, 17. I think last season was 22. So yeah, he's not far off already. We're not even halfway.
So it makes me think that if he's remotely got a chance of playing, he'll start this game, or at least he'll get minutes off the bench. So I'm optimistic at this point. Like I say, it would be. I wouldn't like it if we did get early team news and that is something that affected our lineups, but it could happen. I mean, the reason why it's a problem for us is when you look at the captain matrix, his game weeks 14, 15, 16, it's those home games to come against Fulham and Brentford. So if you do sell him for the Leicester game, you've either got to bring him back or, you know, you run the risk of really getting absolutely spanked in those 2 games, don't you? It's too much, isn't it? I mean, there is no way, if you got rid of him ahead of the Leicester game, if there was a doubt that he would play, that you wouldn't have to then move him back in for home to Fulham. We saw earlier with the team data, Oscar, that they're bottom, right? So you expect City to finish these 2 matches in style with goals, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and you would say Pep can afford to bench him in the Champions League. You know, if he needs to manage his minutes, the group's pretty much wrapped up. They'll go through regardless. So, yeah, I think it's very, very brave to sell him, even if it's just for 1 week. Because you might have other fires to put out, you might have other issues to deal with in Gameweek 15. So, yeah, unfortunately, it's just going to be a perma-captain Haaland, I think, for the next 3, unless we do get news that he's benched or something like that. I think I might start him regardless, but maybe I'll go elsewhere for captaincy like Salah.
Oh, all right. Well, we'll look at the data behind that in a minute. But you're right. I mean, the group is wrapped up for City. I think they're guaranteed top now. And then they've got it's a League Cup game they've got as well, which obviously will rotate for. So Haaland can get rests in the final group game against Seville, and then in the Carabao Cup as well. So yeah, I think he'll start the game, but we'll wait on Pep's update and see how cryptic that is as well. Looking at the captain data for this week, then, are you considering Salah at home to Leeds then?
No, only if we get news that Haaland's benched. If we get an early news or a leak that he's not in the starting 11, then it's where do you go from there? Maybe Foden, maybe Salah. What's your plan if we do get early news that he's not in the starting 11?
I would start.
You can't stick with him captain, can you?
Yeah, I would start him, but I guess I would have to go Salah captain then, wouldn't I?
Yeah.
That's the thing. I mean, you predicted a 4-0. I've gone 3-0 against Leeds. So you've got to think that Salah should come out of the game with a return. 3 goals and 4 assists over the season. I mean, look at that. Haaland 20 attacking returns to Salah's 7. I mean, that is absolutely crazy. I just never saw that kind of gap between. We knew that Salah and Haaland would probably be the 2 premium assets. Yeah. But I didn't see this kind of gap at this point. Salah over the last 6 game weeks, just a goal and an assist. Data-wise, he's still up there. He's still, his 0.66 XG on penalty per 90 is strong. It's behind De Bruyne and it's behind Jesus, but it's still strong enough and the fixture's good enough. Would you, what Arsenal attacking options have you got? Would you be tempted, given that you're backing Arsenal to beat Forest by 3?
I've just got Martinelli. I don't know if he's convincing enough to go there for captaincy. I do think Saka's the slightly better asset. Obviously, costs you more. I'd be tempted. Jesus hasn't quite done it, but yeah, I think he's not a bad option either. I do think it'll be a fairly comfortable win, and it's going to be interesting if Haaland is out, where people go for captaincy, because it will open it wide open for the rank swings if you nail it. But I think it would be Salah. Hesitantly, I have to say, hesitantly, it'd be Salah.
Do you think there'd be anyone brave enough to go Salah again? Because I mean, obviously, we got people got burnt by that, and I've got burnt for it in previous weeks as well when I've backed him. I backed him for the Bournemouth game, which was ridiculous. Obviously, came out there with nothing. Do you think even if fit, Salah's going to be a factor, or you just see Haaland all the way now?
I think some people will. I ran a captain poll earlier on the Discord. We were talking about Discord the other day just to see how they were voting, and it was about 2% had gone for Salah. So it was largely Haaland, but there are a few people brave enough.
It's absolutely crazy, isn't it?
It's impossible to justify unless Haaland's out. I don't see any reason why you would bet elsewhere right now.
It kind of is, and it boils down to what I said there. The 7 attacking returns for the season versus the 20 from Haaland. You just
astonishing.
You're guaranteed a return, and so you've got to go with that. The data as well over the season suggests that Leicester are there to be got at. So over the season, 1.52 XG non-penalty conceded per 90, which is the worst of all the opponents to the captain candidates we've looked at. And even over the last 6, Leicester are 1.39. So Southampton are worse, but you'd still think Leicester against that City attack. They've been good of late, of course, in terms of clean sheets, but they've still conceded chances. And against that City attack, you've got to back goals, haven't you? So I just think you're right. I think it's impossible. If Haaland's fit, you've got to go there again. I don't think it's worth looking elsewhere. Okay, let's look at our teams for the game then and talk about what we're going to do or what we've done. So this is Az's team, which looks sickeningly good. Okay, he's got two Palace players in there, and he looks like he's going to play Henderson away. Interesting, he's going at Henderson at Arsenal rather than Ward at home to City.
Yeah, that is interesting. Not much between them. I'd probably go for Henderson as well, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I guess if you're back in, I guess Forest are more likely to get a surprise result than Leicester, I think is what you're saying there. Exactly. And I think that's it. Yeah. So he's gone Henderson, he's got Trippier, White and Gahey at the back in a back three. He's got Salah as his vice, waiting for the Haaland news. Foden, Zaha, Martinelli, then Haaland, and he's got Kane, he's got the two premiums and Mitrovic, and it looks strong, doesn't it?
It looks really good for this week, yeah. He should be on for another green, touch wood. It's a nice team. The premium does look good right now. Ideally, you'd want De Bruyne, Haaland and Kane, but yeah, his team looks very well set up. And as a consequence of the premium defenders disappointing us, he's able to do that. Yeah, he looks good for this week. Nearly everyone playing at home as well, which is always what you want.
He hasn't got Trent and he hasn't got Cancelo, but he still looks all right for this week in particular, doesn't he?
It's just the City defence. That's all he's lacking, really, because a lot of people are on Cancelo. I think he's the second most owned defender. So that is one factor. For every clean sheet City keep, there's a lot of points gained on Az there. But yeah, his team's nice. Looking good for this week. What do you think he's
going to do? I presume he's going to make a defensive transfer. I haven't spoken to him about his transfer move. I'm just going to look at...
Do you know if he's got 2 or 1 transfer?
Well, I think he's got the 1. I'm just going to have a look. I'm going to have a look what he's got in the bank as well, if I can. But yeah, I mean, he's now what? How many ahead of me? He's 80 points ahead of me. The gap has opened right up, which is really annoying. So he has got 0.1 in the bank, right? So he hasn't got much scope he can do anything with, really. And he's only got the 1 transfer. So
I think he probably rolls.
Yeah, I think he does.
I don't see a stand-up move this week. I think he has to roll there.
There's nothing wrong with that back three. Otherwise, I think he'll make the move to get Emerson out, because obviously he's not a regular starter. But I don't think there's much to do other than that. So worryingly, he looks good. No, well done, Az. Let's look at my team for the week as well. Again, I think every week recently my teams look good, and it does again. I've got Raya at home to Wolves. I've got Diaz in away at Leicester. We'll talk about him in a minute. Trent at home to Leeds. Trippier at home to Villa, then Zaha, Foden, Salah, Martinelli, a very template midfield, and a very template front three of Mitrovic, Tony, and then Haaland with the flag. I've made my transfer already. That was Bowen out to Foden. For me, the factor there was the penalties. He's lost the penalties, as you mentioned, Oscar.
Yep.
Foden, a little bit of a risk, I guess, but because he got the bench in last time out in 13, and because they don't need to get a result in the final Champions League game, I think he starts. I think he starts the remaining 3. So
yeah, Pep loves his rhythm as well for his players. He doesn't tend to bench them for too many games in a row. So I think that does point towards Foden starting this one. So yeah, I think that's a sensible transfer you've made there. Again, touch wood, looks like a good team for this week. I don't mind Trent at all. I know he's been disappointing, but I think he's another one that starts this week after a bench him.
I think my only concern, I don't have a Spurs attacker in there, because I mean Perisic would have been nice to have at Bournemouth, but again he's not assured of a start necessarily now. And I will look again at Perisic going into 17, and I will look again, I'm sure, at Kane and Son, given that we might have money to throw around if Almiron's going to be a factor. Diaz, I went in. I couldn't stretch to Cancelo and hold on to Trent. I wanted to hold on to Trent because I think we've seen enough of Liverpool to think that he's surely got to start now the final couple of games before the break. Yeah. So he could be a really good differential for me. So I went to Diaz to cover the City clean sheets. It's a bit of a risk on Diaz, do you think?
It is a bit. Cancelo started the season slowly in terms of attacking returns, and then he kind of chipped him with a couple of hauls here and there. So it's a little bit risky, but I think you'll be okay as long as Diaz does start. But no, I think you look fine there. Sensible transfer to make because you've got that City defence coverage. Again, I think you look good for this week. It's just all going to come down to Haaland, I think. It's going to be a week where if he's out and you nail captaincy, I think there's going to be massive gains to be made. Because, right now, the difficulty is when you're in the lower ranks is it's harder to climb up. Because like we said earlier, it's a 10-man game. It's Haaland generally is around 200% effective ownership each week. So it's down to what the rest of your team does.
Yeah, I look at this and the only differentials really I think that can make a difference for me here is if Diaz gets something other than a clean sheet, if he gets an attacking return, or I've got Raya and Tony at home to Wolves, which is pretty good. I mean, that's as good as it probably gets in terms of their fixture. So I'd expect to get something out of them and that could make the difference for me. But other than that, it's so template. But I think I consciously had to do that. I think I had to change my behaviours. I had to kind of toe the line and go template for a while and then assess again when we come back from the break. It's difficult for me to do, but I think it's the right call.
Presumably, you'll start Cresswell for the last two. Yeah. So what's the plan with Trent? Do you sell Trent? Do you get rid of him? Do you bench him?
I've got to play him, I think. I think because he can be a difference maker. I've got to look at the fixtures and see how that works out. I mean, let's bring up the ticker and have a look at the last. You start
Trippier, you want to start Diaz. Home to Fulham. You want to start Cresswell ideally, but then do you bench Trent? There's no one else you could really bench in your team.
Yeah,
maybe Mitrovic.
I've got to play Cresswell at home to Palace and Leicester. Otherwise, what's the point in owning him?
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, I guess Trippier in 16 has got Chelsea at home, so that's by no means a guaranteed clean sheet. But you'd still be tempted to play him, though, wouldn't you? In that game.
Yeah, home fixture as well. You would be tempted.
And then Diaz has Fulham Brentford. So I have got a dilemma coming up with that. Yeah. Trent at Spurs might get away with not. But if you've got Trent, arguably you've got to play him. Right? That's the thing. That's the problem I've got.
The Trent of old, you do. You start him regardless of fixture. Is that still the case this season? That's the difficulty, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I will. I mean,
Spurs away.
I think what he gives me is a solution to Mitrovic away at City in 15 and Tony away at City in 16. Right, so suddenly, for those game weeks,
I'm not going to be Awani.
Yeah, well, no, it won't be. No, I'll just play the 4 at the back for those games, and that's where Trent will be a favour for me because even though City have been careless and conceded goals, and Mitrovic and Tony, if Fulham and Brentford are going to score, they'll be their scorers. I can't see myself starting them two in those fixtures. It's very hard to do, isn't it? So I think that's what I'll do, and then resort to the 4 at the back for those games. Because, like you say, you've got to play Cresswell, Trippier, Diaz, and then Trent. If you've got him, you've got to play him because he could be explosive. I'm hoping he has that one game before the break where he just comes in with a double figure. But
it's due. Yeah, based on the data he showed us earlier, seems like it's due. Only one game week this season he's actually got an attack and return him. I think he got 2 in one game, but it's due. Hopefully the Trent owners do get it because it is long overdue. But I'm in the same boat as you with Andreas as well. Reluctantly, I'm going to have to bench him. Yeah,
well, bringing up your team now, and you've got Pope in goal at home to Villa, then Trippier as well. So it's a double up worth having, I think. Even though I do think Villa will have a goal threat there, of course, and with the new manager in to impress. Cancelo away at Leicester, Dyer away at Bournemouth. You should get returns from those two, you would expect. And then Salah, Zaha, Foden, Martinelli midfield, which is all very familiar because you've seen it in my lineup as well. And then Haaland, Mitrovic, Tony, which is exactly the same as mine as well. So we've got the same front seven, and we've got to hope our midfield performs this week, right?
I'm working my way towards that 100% template rating, but I'm not quite there yet. But yeah, I think this week it's an obvious one. Just roll the transfer. Yeah, Andreas first on bench could punish me again, as he did last week. But to me, there's no move that stands out. So the sensible thing, in my opinion, is to roll. And then I think Gameweek 15 is going to have a few issues to kind of figure out what's the best move to do. Could be selling Salah, who's away to Spurs. Could be selling Mitrovic, who's away to City. But I'm not sure which way I'll go yet. So I think it's obvious this week, just roll.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the free City as of I, so you can't do Salah to De Bruyne. So that's shut out for us, isn't it? I guess you could look at Son for the last two, maybe, if you wanted to get rid of Salah. I mean, what's his run? Let's remind ourselves what he's running. He's got Liverpool and Leeds. They're home games, so Son could be a factor.
It's just an Gameweek, isn't it? I suppose he could get something against Liverpool, so maybe I'll do that. But I did look at something like Salah to De Bruyne, Foden to Bowen. Something like that for the last couple of game weeks.
But you like Bowen still then? Do you still think even without the pens, he's got that promise? I mean, the fixtures are good. You're right, Palace, Leicester.
Yeah. It's a fixtures play. Yeah, with no penalties, it's less appealing. But, I think sometimes penalties can be overstated. It's probably more of a factor over a longer run of period. If a team gets a penalty every 6 game weeks on average, then it's, worth factoring in more then. But what are the chances in 2? Maybe much less. But yeah, it's a fixtures play. I like the look of those 2 home games before the World Cup. So I did consider that, but not sure which way I'll go yet, because Dyer does have Liverpool. As I said, Mitrovic has got City. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. There's never been a season quite like this where we've got the unlimited transfers, cut down the middle of the season. So it feels almost like you're obligated to take a punt, right?
Well, you can dead end, can't you? You can dead end your team out of 16 into 16, right? So you can, if you roll this week, you've got your 2 transfers, and then you can probably treat yourself to a vanity transfer, like you said, Salah to a Son maybe, or something there where even if you are captain in Haaland, you're getting a player in who could make a difference to your rank. And that's when we say dead end, for those who don't know, obviously we can change all our lineup after game week 16. So what you take into 16 isn't what you're going to carry into 17, because you can change your entire lineup. So you can take a couple of risks. I don't necessarily think you'll take hits to do that, but if you can roll a transfer in 14, you're then giving yourself that room to make that vanity change. And Salah, if you don't fancy him over the final 2, gives you that lot of money and total freedom then to do what you want.
Yeah, so that's firmly my thinking. Not sure which way I'll go yet. I think there's so many different routes you could go. It is awkward Gameweek 15 with a lot of big teams playing one another, which is a shame, because that's where you could make a move for a premium. But those of us tripled up on City like myself, it's difficult to do that unless I did make 2 moves in combination, like De Bruyne and Bowen.
What's your goals for the season, Oscar? I mean, 2008, 200k, 218,000 now. You've got to say that's a good position to be in at the halfway point, and you'd hope to push up over the next couple of game weeks. Are you thinking firmly top 10k, or are you kind of thinking it's going to be difficult to get to that point?
I've heard 50k is the new top 10k, but I think the dream is to come top 10k.
I've heard 3 million's the new 10k basically.
Yeah, I've heard something like that. I don't know. I don't really set season targets. I just kind of chip away and see where it takes me. Obviously, I want to finish well. Top 10k would be great if I can get there. I was 100k just a couple of weeks ago, and I've gone the opposite way. So keeping it realistic, but it's certainly achievable from here. Anything less than top 50k would be a massive disappointment for me.
Yeah. No, you got to say that. And looking at that team, well, I was just saying, looking at your team for game week 14, I think you should be able to stop the rot with those red arrows. And then if you take 2 transfers into 15, 16, you've got to back yourself, haven't you? So I think you'll nudge towards that top 100k again. As for me, I don't know. I mean, I think I'll see what I can do up until the break. I mean, coming back after the Christmas break from 17, as we said earlier, we enter a period where perhaps there is more scope to make up ground with the chips. I've got to play a blinder with the chips. Is basically it. If I can do that. Earlier,
for example, the gap between 4 mil and 2 mil was like 40 odd points. So Yeah, you never know. You string together a couple of big game weeks and you're there. Plus, you hit your chips, right?
Yeah, I think the problem is with the captaincy that you rely on the captaincy for the big difference maker, don't you? If you hit the differential captain, if you went on a Son or a Kane or a Salah, you could make up ground quickly. But the trouble is Haaland is so compelling as that captain option. It's very hard to see myself taking a risk and moving away from him, regardless of fixture, really, at the moment. There isn't really a fixture I look at and think I wouldn't back Haaland in it. I mean, like, the toughest game is going to be Arsenal away now. So,
yeah,
you know, I'd back him even in that. So it's going to be those double game weeks, isn't it? And it might be that a Kane or a Son or a Salah has a better double game week, and then we have to weigh it up.
Barring a Haaland injury, which I hope doesn't happen, then it's going to be the double game weeks. Seems like the best opportunity. But it's easy to forget. Last season was the same. Do you remember the first half of last season? Salah, I think he blanked once. Similar run to what Haaland's been on. He blanked once in like the opening 17 or something crazy like that. And it was the same then, to be fair. And then Salah's season's changed, so perhaps the same could happen to Haaland. We don't know.
The post-AFCON narrative that many people annoyed a lot of people on Twitter. Certainly, I just don't see it.
Back from that.
Do you see Haaland dropping off? I just
no.
Plus, that's it. I can't see it at all. He doesn't go to the World Cup. No, absolutely. So he's going to be fully rested, and I just think he looks like the only thing that could derail him is the injury. We've got the flag on him at the moment, and we'll see whether that is more than Pep's described so far. Like you say, I kind of hope it is, and I hope it isn't in a way. I mean, if he does have a spell out of injury, I wouldn't want it to be now. I want it to be a run in the second half of the season where it could really make a difference. If he's injured now, he could miss 3 games. Yeah, that might open up a few opportunities, but then we have the break and he's back. Whereas if he has a 5 or 6 game week spell in the second half of the season where he's out, that could turn the season on its head. I don't wish an injury on him, of course, because he's an amazing player and what a treat it is to see him in the Premier League. But in terms of FPL, there's no question that a gap of 5 or 6 weeks for Haaland would change a lot. So we'd have to see if that happens. He came to the league with an injury record that would suggest that's going to happen, but no sign of it really so far, is there?
Not at all. Yeah, it was something that people talked a lot about, his injury record, will he hit the ground running coming to a new league, all these things. People said he's going to be rotated in and out, so go for Kane instead. And none of that's come to fruition, to be fair. They've done exceptionally well to manage him through the season, starting every league game. So, right now it's difficult to see him slowing down, but you would probably have said the same about Salah after 17 game weeks last season. But like you said, he's not going to the World Cup, so it's very difficult to see that happening. Yeah, I mean, Haaland gets plenty. He scored those, Salah, I say.
Oh, has he? I've said that. Yeah, but he does that, and then we thought he was back when he got the hat-trick at Rangers, and so you can't read too much into that. It will be interesting if Salah, impresses tonight in Europe and Haaland is out. We're going to see a swing of the captaincy then. It's a handy fixture. I think that Haaland's getting, the way City are playing as well, Haaland's not getting, the stress on his body isn't enormous because he's not playing a part in the build-up and he's not, physically defenders are really struggling to get to grips with him. Maybe the second half of the season when we'll see more of that. There's no question that teams are going to have time to think about tactically how they deal with that. There was that story, wasn't there, a few weeks back of managers ringing each other and going, "How are you going to deal with Haaland?" But so they've got a few weeks to get together again, have that managers meeting, and go, right, how are we going to deal with him? But I just don't see it. No, they'll be on a Zoom call like us, trying to work it out, but it can't be done. I don't think there's an answer. No, there isn't. Black Box Leagues, let's check in that before we go. Congratulations to Simon Farr, who's on top. When we last did this, Focal, there was a certain FPL Raptor top of the Black Box League. Really? I had a look and he's now 11th, so just outside the top 10. But a shout out. My friend and yours, Ross, always gets a shout out on here because he was top for that 1 week. I'm sure he's got a chance of getting back in. As I said, he's 11th. Yeah. But at the moment, it's Simon Farr out on top on 849. Then we've got Sven Arneson on 848, Adam Keenan 843. And Adam, I'm not going to do justice to his surname, on 842. Very, very tight. It's just like we saw with the ranks earlier. So close in the Black Box Leagues as well. Congratulations to Simon, but I'm sure Ross is plotting his way back to number 1 spot. Right, well done. Oscar. You made it to the end of the show. We've done under 2 hours. I think this is the shortest show we've done
Hour 47.
Yeah, I think it's the shortest show we've done since probably the first series when we started out. And that just shows the efficiency that you brought to this episode, Oscar.
I was about to say, those who watch my stuff know I'm renowned for doing generally 5 to 10 minutes videos max. I could count on one hand how many videos I've done over 10 minutes. So that was probably the toughest test of my FPL career, but I loved it.
I'll tell you what, though, Az and I have done some recorded videos, and we find them so much harder than doing lives. Do you find...
Really?
We just like had to do many takes, and we burst out laughing. It's like, I much prefer doing live stuff. I mean, so is do you, when you're doing your stuff, do you have to re-record it, or do you just do it in one take these days?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I probably do between 20 and 30 retakes every video.
See, there you go. That's crazy.
But my videos are very short, so you know, this might take 2 hours to film, and I'll spend 2-3 hours to do a whole video. You know, it's only 5 minutes, the end product, but I write down what I'm going to say, so it's a bit easier. I just don't have to stumble over my words.
Well, you've done brilliantly
when I'm live.
You've done brilliantly tonight. So many thanks again for stepping in for Az, who will be back. I hope he's back for Game Week 15. He's, as I say, nursing himself after the hernia op, which hopefully hasn't put his Game Week 39 in doubt. We'll have to see, but. A key member of that squad, of course, the Team South. Hopefully he's going to be fit for that and fit for a turn next episode, Game Week 15. Thanks to those who tuned in, and thanks again to Oscar. And if you did tune in and you're still watching, hit the subscribe, hit the like button. Actually, Oscar, I promised you the opportunity to say this because you're so experienced at this on your channel. So over to you to cover the smash, the hit and likes. Go ahead.
Yeah, as Mark was saying, if you guys have enjoyed the stream, please do hit like on it. We got 200 likes now. Whether you're watching this live now or on catch up, hit like, guys. Let's try and get it to 300 likes. How about that? Or more post video. But yeah, there's loads of work that goes on behind the scenes that I think they don't realize, Mark. You guys do hours of prep with the graphics and so on in the group chat with you and Az. They do put in tons of work behind the scenes that you don't realize. It seems like we just rock up, or you rock up and you go live and it's done. But you guys do put in a lot of work, so thank you for that.
I did, even though I got the fixtures wrong, which and when I make a mistake, and because it is live, I can't do anything about it as well. I don't know. I beat myself up awfully afterwards. It's bad, isn't it? And you go, oh,
you're only human, Mark.
Can't believe I got that wrong. But I am only human, as that rank of 3.9 shows. Absolutely. But yeah, thanks again, Oscar. Thanks for joining us. And best of luck for your season. I'm sure we'll have you on before the end of the season, but not if you carry on beating me by such a massive margin. It's good night from me.
Good night from me.